I was standing by the French windows in my living room, watching the late afternoon sun paint Greenwich in shades of gold, when I heard the front door close. Iris had left early. Something about needing to resolve an urgent matter at the bank. I thought nothing of it at the time. After 4 years of working for me, she had earned my complete trust. 3 minutes later, her phone started ringing on the coffee table. I walked over to tell her she'd forgotten it, already reaching for my own phone to text her. But when I glanced at the screen, my entire world stopped spinning. The caller ID showed a photo I knew by heart, a photo that shouldn't exist on anyone's phone but mine. Daniel, my son, my beautiful boy with those green-gray eyes and that smile that could light up a room. The photo from our trip to Cape Cod when he was 23, just months before the accident that took him from me. My hand started trembling so violently I almost dropped the phone. 6 years. It had been 6 years since I buried my only child. 6 years since that horrific night when the hospital called to say he hadn't survived the injuries from the car crash. 6 years since my world ended. I stared at that photo, my vision blurring with tears I hadn't allowed myself to cry in months. Why did Iris have Daniel's picture on her phone? How did she even get it? The photo was taken on my camera, stored on my computer, printed and framed in my bedroom. I had never shared it digitally with anyone. The phone kept ringing, vibrating against the mahogany table. Without thinking, I answered it. Hello? My voice came out as barely a whisper. Silence. Heavy breathing on the other end, then nothing. Whoever it was hung up. I stood there frozen, holding Iris's phone like it was a live grenade. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Something was very wrong. Every instinct I had developed over 30 years, building a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, was screaming that something was terribly, horrifically wrong. I unlocked the phone. Iris had never bothered with complex security, just a simple pattern I had seen her use dozens of times when she needed to check recipes or respond to messages from her family in Romania. My fingers moved automatically, and the screen opened. I went straight to the messages. The most recent conversation made my blood run cold. I know where your son is. $500,000 transferred to the offshore account I'll provide, and you'll see him again. Otherwise, he disappears forever. You have 48 hours to decide. Don't test me, Mrs. Ashford. I have nothing to lose. The message was unsent, sitting in the draft folder. It was dated today, written just an hour ago. The recipient field was blank, but I knew with absolute certainty it was meant for me. I sank onto the couch, my legs refusing to hold me anymore. The phone slipped from my shaking hands onto the cushion beside me. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was reading, trying to understand how this could be real. Where your son is, not was, is, present tense. I picked up the phone again, my hands steadier now as pure adrenaline took over. I scrolled through Iris's photo gallery, and what I found there made me gasp out loud. Dozens of photos, maybe 50 or more, all of the same man. He was older, thinner, with a beard and longer hair. He wore construction clothes in some photos, casual street clothes in others. But those eyes, God, those eyes. I would know those green-gray eyes anywhere. They were mine. They were Thomas's. They were Daniel's. My son was alive. I zoomed in on one of the clearer photos. There, on the side of his neck, was the small birthmark I used to kiss when he was a baby. The birthmark that was documented in his medical records, that I had described to the funeral home when I had to identify what I thought was his body. The funeral. Oh God, the funeral. I had buried someone. I had stood beside a closed casket and said goodbye to my child. I had watched them lower that casket into the ground. If Daniel was alive, who had I buried? My stomach lurched and I ran to the bathroom, barely making it before I was sick. I stayed there on the cool tile floor for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, my entire body shaking, my mind trying to process the impossible. When I finally managed to stand, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my carefully styled blonde silver hair disheveled, my mascara smudged. I looked like I had aged 10 years in the span of 10 minutes. I looked exactly how I felt, like a woman whose entire reality had just been shattered. I washed my face, fixed my appearance automatically, Years of corporate discipline kicking in even when my world was collapsing. Then I went back to the living room and picked up Iris's phone again. I studied the photos more carefully this time, looking for context clues. Many were taken at what looked like a shelter or community center. I could see signs in the background of some shots. St. Catherine's Daily Meal Service, Bridgeport Community Outreach. Bridgeport. That was only 30 minutes from here. I found videos, too. Short clips of the man I now knew was Daniel, working on construction sites, talking with other men, laughing at something off camera. His voice. I played one of the videos and heard his voice for the first time in 6 years. It was deeper, rougher than I remembered, but it was him. "Hey Marcus, you coming to poker night?" Another man called out in one video. "Can't, man. Got an early shift tomorrow. Sarah's making dinner anyway." Marcus. They were calling him Marcus. And who was Sarah? I scrolled further and found my answer. Photos of Daniel, Marcus, with a young woman, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. In the most recent photos, she had a visible baby bump. My son was alive. He was going by another name. He had a girlfriend who was pregnant. And my employee of 4 years, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had treated almost like family, had known about this for God knows how long and was planning to extort $500,000 from me. I checked the dates on the earliest photos. 8 months ago. Iris had known for 8 months that my son was alive and had said nothing. 8 months of watching me cry on the anniversary of his death. 8 months of consoling me when I mentioned how much I missed him. 8 months of pure, calculated deception. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I had paid for her emergency appendectomy 2 years ago, covering the full cost without hesitation. I had given her generous Christmas bonuses, time off whenever she needed it, treated her with respect and kindness. And this entire time, she had been planning to use my greatest pain, my deepest loss, to extort money from me. But beneath the betrayal, beneath the anger, there was something else, something bigger. Hope. Terrifying, overwhelming, impossible hope. My son was alive. I started pacing, my mind working through the logistics, the questions, the implications. Why didn't Daniel, Marcus, remember who he was? Where had he been for 6 years? Why had the hospital told me he was dead? How could such a catastrophic error have happened? I thought back to that night 6 years ago. The police had called first, saying there had been a serious accident. Then the hospital called 2 hours later. I remembered the doctor's exact words. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. Your son sustained massive trauma. We did everything we could, but he didn't make it." I had been hysterical. Thomas was already in bed, recovering from a minor heart episode he'd had the week before. I couldn't bring myself to wake him with that news, not with his weak heart. I drove to the hospital alone, numb with shock. They asked me to identify the body, but I couldn't. I couldn't look at my son's broken body. I told them about the birthmark instead, gave them his dental records. They confirmed it was him, but it wasn't. It couldn't have been. I grabbed my own phone and pulled up my contacts. I still had the number for Dr. Richard Pemberton, the medical examiner who had signed Daniel's death certificate. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, but his number was still there, saved in a folder I labeled "Daniel Never Delete." My finger hovered over the call button. It was almost 6 in the evening. Would he even answer? And what would I say? "Hello, I think you might have made a mistake and declared my son dead when he was actually alive." But I had to know. I had to understand what had happened. I pressed call. The phone rang 4 times before a man's voice answered, cautious and tired. "Pemberton. Dr. Pemberton, this is Helena Ashford. I don't know if you remember me. My son, Daniel Ashford, died in a car accident 6 years ago. You signed the death certificate." There was a long silence. Too long. "Mrs. Ashford." His voice had changed, become strained. Why are you calling me about this now?" "Because I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Was there any possibility at all that a mistake was made? That the body you examined wasn't actually my son?" Another silence, even longer this time. I could hear his breathing, heavy and labored, like a man who had been running from something and had finally been caught. "Dr. Pemberton, please. I need to know." "Mrs. Ashford, I'm not able to discuss this. It's been 6 years. The case is closed." The case may be closed, but my son is apparently alive and suffering from amnesia, living in a shelter in Bridgeport under the name Marcus. So I'm asking you again, was there a mistake? I heard what sounded like a glass breaking on his end, then a muttered curse. How did you find out? His voice was barely a whisper now. My heart stopped. So it's true. You knew. You knew there was a mistake and you said nothing? It wasn't. It was complicated. The accident involved two vehicles, two young men of similar age, similar build, both with severe trauma. In the chaos of the emergency room, the bodies were... There was a misidentification. By the time I realized the error, several weeks had passed. I tried to find him, Mrs. Ashford. I swear to God I tried. But the other victim, the one who actually died, his family had already buried him. Your son had been transferred to a psychiatric facility for treatment of severe head trauma and amnesia. When I went to find him there, he was gone. He'd walked out one day and never came back. No ID, no memory, no way to track him. And you didn't tell me? You didn't think I deserved to know my son might be alive? I looked for him for months. His voice rose, defensive and desperate. I hired private investigators. I checked every hospital, every shelter, every facility in 3 states. But without memory, without ID, he was just another homeless man lost in the system. And I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I told you he might be alive and then we never found him. Afraid of the lawsuit, the consequences. I retired early. I've lived with this guilt every single day for 6 years. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to scream. A mistake. A simple, catastrophic mistake had stolen 6 years of my life. 6 years of believing my son was dead. 6 years of grief that killed my husband and nearly killed me. Where is he now? Pemberton asked quietly. You said Bridgeport? St. Catherine's shelter area. I don't know exactly where yet, but I will find out. Mrs. Ashford, you need to understand something. The head trauma was severe. The amnesia might be permanent, and even if you find him, even if you tell him who he is, there's no guarantee he'll remember you or accept it. His brain created new neural pathways, a new identity. Forcing memories that aren't there could cause serious psychological damage. He's my son. My voice broke on the last word. I buried him once. I'm not losing him again. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were shaking again, but this time not from shock, from determination, from purpose. I looked at Iris's phone still in my other hand. She would be back eventually to retrieve it, and when she did, I would be ready. But first, I needed to see him. I needed to see my son with my own eyes, confirm that this wasn't some cruel dream or elaborate hoax. I grabbed my purse and my car keys. My driver had the evening off, but I didn't care. I hadn't driven myself in years, preferring the convenience of having Robert handle it. But tonight, I needed to do this myself. The drive to Bridgeport took 40 minutes in Saturday evening traffic. I used my car's GPS to locate St. Catherine's shelter. It was in a rough neighborhood, the kind of area I would normally never visit alone. But fear for my own safety seemed absurdly insignificant compared to what I was about to face. I parked across the street from the shelter and sat there, engine running, watching the entrance. Men and women came and went, some carrying bags, some empty-handed. I studied every face, looking for those eyes, and then I saw him. He walked out of the shelter with another man, both wearing construction vests and work boots. He was talking, gesturing with his hands the way Daniel always did when he was excited about something. He was thinner than I remembered, his face harder, more weathered. But it was him, my son, my baby boy, who I had rocked to sleep, who I had taught to ride a bike, who I had sent off to college with tears in my eyes. I got out of the car without thinking, taking a step toward him. But then I stopped. What was I going to do? Run up to him screaming, "Daniel, it's me, your mother?" He didn't know who I was. According to Dr. Pemberton, he didn't even know who he was. I watched him climb into an old pickup truck with his friend and drive away. I stood there on the sidewalk, tears streaming down my face as the taillights disappeared around the corner. My son was alive, but he was a stranger. And the woman I had trusted had known this for 8 months and chosen to use it to destroy me financially rather than give me back the only thing I had ever truly wanted. I got back in my car and drove home, my mind already working through what came next. Iris would return for her phone, and when she did, I would be waiting. We would have a conversation, and by the end of it, I would know everything she knew, every detail of how she found him, what she knew about his life, why she thought she could blackmail me. But more importantly, I would figure out how to get my son back without destroying the life he had apparently built. Because Dr. Pemberton was right about one thing. I couldn't just force myself back into his life. Not yet. Not until I understood what I was dealing with. The game had changed. This wasn't about grief anymore. This wasn't about accepting loss. This was about strategy, careful planning, and the kind of ruthless determination that had built my fortune in the first place. Iris had made one critical mistake. She had assumed that my wealth was my greatest asset, but she was wrong. My greatest asset was my mind, and I was about to use every bit of intelligence, every resource, every connection I had built over 30 years to reclaim what was mine. My son was alive, and nothing, not amnesia, not blackmail, not 6 years of lies, was going to keep me from him. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to go inside. The house loomed before me, this massive colonial mansion that Thomas and I bought when Daniel was 10. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a pool we barely used, gardens that required a full-time groundskeeper. We bought it because we could, because it represented everything we had built together. Now it was just a monument to everything I had lost. When I finally walked through the front door, the silence hit me like it always did. Iris usually filled this space with her presence, the sound of her moving through rooms, the faint hum of the vacuum, the smell of whatever she was cooking for my dinner. But tonight, the house was completely empty. Just me and 2,500 square feet of memories I couldn't escape. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I kept in the kitchen and sat at the island where I used to help Daniel with his homework. He would sit on this exact stool, swinging his legs because they didn't quite reach the floor yet, asking me questions about fractions or spelling words. Thomas would come home late from the office and Daniel would run to him, excited to show off whatever he had accomplished that day. Those were good years, the best years of my life, though I didn't fully appreciate it then. I was so focused on building the business, on proving myself in a male-dominated industry. I traveled constantly, missed soccer games and school plays. I thought I had time. I thought there would always be more opportunities to be present, to be the mother I meant to be. Then Daniel went to college at Yale, studying architecture. He wanted to design sustainable buildings, create spaces that would make people's lives better. He had inherited my ambition, but also his father's kindness, his genuine desire to help people. He was everything we had hoped he would become. The accident happened during his senior year, just 3 months before graduation. He had come home for the weekend, something he rarely did because he was so busy with his thesis project. But it was Thomas's 60th birthday, and Daniel insisted on being there. We had dinner at Thomas's favorite restaurant in Stamford. Daniel was excited, talking about job offers he had received, about plans to work in sustainable urban development. He left around 10 that night, wanting to get back to campus to finish some work. The roads were wet from earlier rain. The police said the other driver ran a red light, hit Daniel's car on the driver's side at full speed. Both vehicles were totaled. Both drivers were rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. I got the call at midnight. Thomas was already asleep. He had been having heart palpitations for a few weeks, nothing serious according to his cardiologist, just stress and age catching up with him. But I knew the news about Daniel would destroy him, and I was terrified of how his heart would handle it. I drove to the hospital alone. The emergency room doctor met me in the waiting area, his face grave. He explained about the severity of Daniel's injuries, the emergency surgery they had performed, the complications. Then, 2 hours later, he came back and told me Daniel was gone. I remember collapsing. I remember nurses helping me to a chair. I remember them asking if there was someone they could call, but I couldn't think, couldn't speak. My son was dead. My only child, my beautiful boy, was gone. They asked me to identify the body, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't see him like that. Instead, I told them about the birthmark on his neck, provided his dental records from my phone, where I kept all our important documents. They confirmed it matched. They were so sorry for my loss. I had to go home and tell Thomas. I found him in the kitchen making coffee, still in his pajamas, wondering where I had gone so early. The moment he saw my face, he knew. He didn't even wait for me to say the words. He just knew. He had the heart attack 3 hours later. Massive and sudden. The paramedics said he was probably dead before he hit the floor. Our family doctor, who had known us for 20 years, told me later that Thomas's heart literally couldn't handle the grief. Broken heart syndrome, she called it. It's a real medical condition where extreme emotional stress causes the heart to fail. So I didn't just lose my son that weekend. I lost my husband, too. I lost my entire family in the span of one day. The funeral was a blur. We had a double service, Daniel and Thomas together. Over 300 people came. Colleagues from my firm, Thomas's business partners, Daniel's friends from college, neighbors, relatives I hadn't seen in years. They all said the same meaningless things. I'm so sorry. They're in a better place. Time will heal. But time didn't heal. Time just made the wound more familiar. I sold my consulting firm 6 months later. I couldn't focus, couldn't bring myself to care about quarterly projections and client acquisitions when my entire reason for building that empire was gone. I had created that business to provide for my family, to give Daniel opportunities, to build a legacy. Without them, it was just numbers on a spreadsheet. The sale brought in $12 million after taxes, more money than I could ever spend, and absolutely worthless in terms of buying back what mattered. I withdrew from everything, stopped seeing friends, stopped attending social events, stopped leaving the house except when absolutely necessary. I kept the house because selling it felt like another betrayal, another way of erasing Daniel's existence. His room remained exactly as he left it. Posters on the walls, books on the shelves, his Yale hoodie draped over the desk chair. That's when I hired Iris. The isolation was killing me slowly, and my therapist suggested having someone else in the house, even just as staff. I went through an agency, interviewed 5 candidates, and chose Iris because she was quiet and unobtrusive. She didn't try to cheer me up or tell me everything would be okay. She just did her work efficiently and left me alone. But over time, our relationship changed. She would occasionally ask about the photos around the house. I found myself talking to her about Daniel, about Thomas, about the life I used to have. She was a good listener, or so I thought. She shared stories about her own children back in Romania, 2 boys she hadn't seen in person for 3 years. She cried when she talked about missing them, about the sacrifice she was making to give them a better future. I felt a connection with her. Another mother separated from her children, though for very different reasons. I started doing little things for her, giving her my old designer clothes that no longer fit, buying groceries for her small apartment, giving her paid time off when her mother got sick. When she needed emergency surgery for appendicitis 2 years ago and didn't have adequate insurance, I paid the entire hospital bill without hesitation. $23,000. I didn't even blink. I thought we understood each other. I thought we had built something real, even within the employer-employee dynamic. I treated her less like staff and more like the daughter I never had. What a fool I was. She had been studying me this entire time, learning my weaknesses, identifying my pressure points, figuring out exactly how to extract maximum value from my pain. Every tear I shed in front of her, every vulnerable moment I shared, she was cataloging it, planning how to use it. 8 months ago, she found Daniel. However it happened, wherever she saw him, she recognized him from the hundreds of photos throughout my house. And instead of telling me, instead of giving me back the one thing that could have saved me from drowning in grief, she saw an opportunity. She saw $500,000. I wondered how long she had planned this. Had she been working up the courage to send that message for months? Or was she desperate now, her mother's condition worsening, her own financial situation becoming critical? Part of me wanted to understand her motivations, to find some humanity in what she had done. But the larger part of me, the part that had built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing, that had navigated corporate warfare and ruthless competition for 3 decades, that part just felt cold, calculating, ready to do whatever was necessary. I had been soft for too long. 6 years of grief had made me weak, had made me forget who I was before the losses broke me. But seeing Daniel alive, even from a distance, had awakened something in me. A fierce, protective determination I hadn't felt since the day he was born. I wasn't the shattered widow anymore. I was a mother whose child had been stolen from her by negligence and lies. And I was a businesswoman who knew exactly how to negotiate when someone tried to take advantage of me. Iris had made a critical error in judgment. She assumed that because I was vulnerable, I was weak. She assumed that because I had money, I would simply pay to avoid confrontation. She assumed that 6 years of grief had destroyed my ability to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I finished my wine and set the glass in the sink. Then I went to my office and opened the safe where I kept important documents. Inside was $2 million in bearer bonds, completely liquid, untraceable, kept for emergencies. I also pulled out a folder containing every piece of information I had on Iris: her employment contract, her visa documents, her emergency contact information, her bank account details for direct deposit. I had resources she couldn't even imagine. Private investigators, lawyers, connections to immigration services, financial experts who could trace money anywhere in the world. If this was going to be a negotiation, I would enter it with every possible advantage. But first, I needed more information about Daniel. I needed to understand his life now, his condition, his stability. I needed to know if approaching him would help or harm him. Dr. Pemberton's warning echoed in my mind. Forcing memories could cause serious psychological damage. I sat at my computer and started searching for information about amnesia, about traumatic brain injury, about the best approaches for reuniting with someone who didn't remember you existed. I read medical journals, support group forums, case studies. I absorbed everything I could find, the way I used to research market trends and competitor strategies. By 3 in the morning, I had a plan forming. It wasn't complete yet, but the outline was there. I would need to be patient, strategic, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. I would need to use every skill I had developed over my career, and I would need to be prepared for the possibility that getting Daniel back might not look the way I had always imagined. But I would get him back. Whatever it took, however long it required, I would reclaim my son. The house was still silent around me, but it felt different now. Not empty, waiting, like it knew that everything was about to change. I heard a car pull into the driveway around 4 in the morning. Iris, coming back for her phone. I had left it exactly where it was on the coffee table, bait in a trap she didn't even know had been set. I stood and walked to the living room, positioning myself by the window. I watched her get out of her car, watched her hesitate before walking to the front door. She had a key, but she knocked instead. Tentative, guilty. I let her knock 3 times before I opened the door. Our eyes met, and in that instant, both of us knew the game had fundamentally changed. I opened the door slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with Iris the entire time. She stood on my doorstep, looking exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed like she had been crying. Good. She should be upset. She should be terrified. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. I forgot my phone and I—" "Come in, Iris." My voice was calm, almost pleasant. "We need to talk." She hesitated, her hand gripping her purse strap so tightly her knuckles went white. She knew. Of course she knew. The phone had been unlocked when she left it, and she was smart enough to realize I would have looked at it. She stepped inside and I closed the door behind her, the lock clicking into place with a finality that made her flinch. I gestured toward the living room, and she walked ahead of me like a prisoner being led to interrogation. Which, in a sense, she was. "Your phone is on the table where you left it," I said, still using that same calm tone. I sat in the armchair, the one Thomas used to favor, positioning myself so the lamp behind me would cast my face partially in shadow while illuminating hers completely. An old negotiation tactic. Keep them off balance, make them feel exposed. Iris picked up the phone with shaking hands, clutching it to her chest like a shield. She remained standing, probably thinking about running, but we both knew she wouldn't. She needed to know how much I knew, what I planned to do. "Sit down, Iris." It wasn't a request. She sat on the edge of the couch, perched like a bird ready to take flight. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm, watching the internal debate play across her face. Deny everything? Confess? Try to explain? "How long have you known?" I finally asked. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Tears started streaming down her face. "Mrs. Ashford, please, let me explain." "How long?" 8 months. Her voice was barely a whisper. I found him 8 months ago. I absorbed that, feeling the betrayal cut deeper, even though I had already calculated the timeline from the photos. 8 months of lies, 8 months of watching me grieve while she sat on information that would have changed everything. Tell me exactly how it happened. Every detail. And Iris? I leaned forward slightly. If you lie to me even once, if you leave out anything significant, this conversation ends, and the next person you talk to will be from Immigration Services. Do you understand? She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I volunteer at St. Catherine's Shelter on my days off. I've been doing it for 2 years, helping in the kitchen, serving meals. 8 months ago, I was bringing food to the dining area and I saw him. At first, I thought I was seeing things. But then I looked closer and I saw the birthmark on his neck, the same one from the photos in your bedroom. And you said nothing to me. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe it was just someone who looked like him. So I started watching him, taking photos when I could. I asked the staff about him. They said his name was Marcus, that he'd been living on and off at the shelter for almost 2 years. Before that, he was completely off the grid, living on the streets, in abandoned buildings. He has no memory of anything before he woke up in a hospital 6 years ago. And when did you become certain it was Daniel? After about 2 weeks, I was sure. The birthmark, the eyes, everything. I even checked old news articles about the accident, compared photos. It was him. But Mrs. Ashford, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. Continue. She took a shaky breath. I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But then I thought about my mother. She's dying, Mrs. Ashford. Diabetes has destroyed her kidneys. She needs a transplant, special treatment that costs money we don't have. And my boys, they're living in poverty while I'm here cleaning toilets in a mansion worth millions. I send them everything I can, but it's never enough. So you decided to extort me instead of simply asking for help. I was desperate. Her voice rose, defensive now. I've been desperate for years. Do you know what it's like to choose between saving your mother's life and feeding your children? Do you know what it's like to watch people like you throw away more money on a single dinner than I make in a month? People like me? I kept my voice level, but ice crept into my tone. People who gave you a job when you needed one? Who paid you fairly, gave you benefits, paid for your emergency surgery without hesitation? People who trusted you, confided in you, treated you like family? She had the grace to look ashamed. You've been kind to me. You have. But kindness doesn't pay for my mother's medication. Kindness doesn't bring my children to America. Kindness apparently means nothing when there's money to be stolen. I stood up, walking to the window, my back to her. You had 8 months to tell me my son was alive. 8 months to come to me with your mother's situation and ask for help. I would have helped you, Iris. I would have paid for your mother's treatment, helped bring your children here legally, set up a proper future for all of you. All you had to do was give me back my son. I know. Her voice cracked. I know that now, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd fire me once you had what you wanted. Afraid you'd help your son and forget all about the poor Romanian woman who cleaned your house. I've seen how people like you operate. You're generous when it suits you. But once you get what you need, people like me become invisible again. I turned to face her. So your solution was to make yourself unforgettable through blackmail? To ensure I'd hate you forever, instead of being grateful to you? That was your brilliant strategy? She dissolved into sobs, her whole body shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was going to send the message today, but I couldn't do it. That's why I left my phone here. I couldn't go through with it. I was sitting in my car outside the bank, trying to make myself press send, and I just couldn't. But you wrote it. You planned it. You took those photos over 8 months, documenting my son's life while watching me suffer. You calculated exactly how much you thought you could extract from my pain. The only reason you didn't send it is because you lost your nerve, not because you suddenly developed a conscience. What are you going to do? She looked up at me with terrified eyes. Are you going to call the police? Have me deported? I sat back down, studying her. This was the critical moment. I could destroy her with a single phone call, report her for attempted extortion, have her visa revoked, ensure she never worked in this country again. It would be justified, it would be satisfying, but it wouldn't get me what I needed. I spent the evening doing research, Iris. After I saw those photos, after I spoke with Dr. Pemberton, yes, the medical examiner who signed my son's death certificate, I learned a lot about traumatic brain injury and amnesia. Do you know what the experts say about trying to force memories on someone with retrograde amnesia? She shook her head. They say it can cause severe psychological damage, that the brain has created new neural pathways, a new identity, and trying to override that can lead to psychotic breaks, depression, even suicide. They say the kindest thing you can do is let the person live the life they've built, even if it means you can never reclaim the relationship you lost. So you're not going to tell him who he is? I didn't say that. I said forcing memories is dangerous, but there are other approaches. Gradual exposure, building a new relationship first, becoming part of his life as I am now, not as I was then. I paused. But to do any of that, I need information. I need access. I need someone who already knows him, who can facilitate introductions without raising suspicion. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You want me to help you. I want to propose a transaction. A real one, not the crude extortion you were planning. You provide me with everything you know about Daniel's current life. You introduce me to him naturally, as a friend of yours who's interested in supporting the shelter. You give me updates on his condition, his relationships, his stability. You help me build a connection with him gradually, safely. And in return? In return, I pay for your mother's treatment. Full kidney transplant, best specialists, all medical expenses covered. I also pay to bring your children here legally, set up trust funds for their education, and triple your current salary. You'll sign a contract making you my official liaison and personal assistant with full benefits and legal protections. Her mouth fell open. You're offering me more than what I was trying to steal from you. I'm offering you what you should have asked for in the first place. But Iris, hear me clearly. This offer comes with ironclad conditions. You sign confidentiality agreements that would destroy you financially if you ever tell anyone the full truth about Daniel. You provide complete transparency about everything you know. And if you ever try to leverage my son against me again, I won't just have you deported. I will make sure your mother never receives another cent of medical care, your children lose their chance at coming here, and you spend the rest of your life in legal battles you cannot afford. You would do that? Even to my innocent mother and children? I would do anything to protect my son. Anything. You decided to turn this into a negotiation, so let's negotiate like adults. I hold all the cards, Iris. You brought a knife to a gunfight. The only question is whether you're smart enough to take the generous exit I'm offering you. She was quiet for a long time, processing. I could see her mind working, weighing her options, realizing she truly had none. If she refused, I could destroy her. If she accepted, she got everything she needed but lost all control. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. Why not just have me arrested? Because I need you. Because my son trusts you, knows you, and that trust is valuable. Because having you as an ally is more useful than having you as an enemy. And because despite what you tried to do, I understand desperate parents do desperate things. I don't forgive you, Iris. I'm not sure I ever will. But I can use you. And right now, that's more important than revenge. What about Marcus? What about his girlfriend, the baby? Tell me about them. She took a breath, settling into information mode. Her name is Sarah Chen. She's 28, works at a grocery store. She's 6 months pregnant. They met at the shelter about a year ago. She was escaping an abusive relationship, had nowhere to go. Marcus, Daniel, he protected her, helped her get back on her feet. They fell in love. She doesn't know anything about his past either. He's told her he has no memory before the hospital. Does he seem happy? Yes, genuinely happy. He works construction, saves every penny. He's planning to rent a small apartment for them before the baby comes. He talks about being a good father, about building a stable life. He's a good man, Mrs. Ashford. Whatever he was before, whoever Daniel was, Marcus is a good man now. Something in my chest tightened. My son was going to be a father. I was going to be a grandmother. And none of them knew I existed. What about his memories? Has he ever mentioned any fragments, any dreams, anything that might indicate recovery? He has nightmares sometimes. Sarah mentioned it once. He dreams about a woman with blonde hair, about a big house, about driving in rain. But he doesn't know what they mean. He thinks they're just anxiety dreams, not memories. He was dreaming about me, about our home. Some part of his brain remembered, even if his conscious mind didn't. I want to see him tomorrow, in person. You'll take me to the shelter as a potential donor. Introduce me as Helena, your employer who's interested in supporting their programs. We'll keep it brief, professional. I just need to see him up close, speak to him, confirm everything you've told me. And if he recognizes you, if something triggers a memory, then we'll deal with it. But right now, I need to see my son with my own eyes. I need to know he's real, that this isn't some elaborate dream I'm having. Iris nodded slowly. I'll take you tomorrow afternoon. That's when he usually comes in for the free lunch program before his evening shift. Good. Now, I need you to write down everything. Every detail about his life, his routines, his relationships, his health. I want medical information if you have it, work schedules, everything. You'll give me copies of all the photos and videos on your phone. And Iris? Yes, Mrs. Ashford? That draft message you wrote? Delete it. Right now in front of me. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, opened the messages, and deleted the unsent extortion demand. I watched it disappear, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. The photos and videos stay for now, I said. You'll send me copies tomorrow. But that message? That never existed. We're starting fresh, with a proper arrangement between us. Understood? Understood. You can go now. Be back here at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Dress professionally. You're accompanying your employer on a charitable visit, not coming as a volunteer. We need to establish the right dynamic from the start. She stood, still clutching her phone, looking drained. Mrs. Ashford? Thank you. For not calling the police. For giving me a chance to make this right. Don't thank me yet, Iris. You haven't earned gratitude. You've earned a conditional reprieve. Whether that becomes genuine trust depends entirely on what you do next. She nodded and left quickly, practically fleeing to her car. I watched from the window as she drove away, then finally allowed myself to collapse back into the chair. My hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline rather than shock. I had just negotiated the most important deal of my life, and I had done it on instinct, using every skill I had developed over decades in business. But the hard part was yet to come. Tomorrow, I would see Daniel. Tomorrow, I would look into my son's eyes, and he would look back at me with no recognition, no memory, no connection to the 24 years we shared together. Tomorrow, I would meet my son as a stranger. I went to my office and pulled out a legal pad, starting to write down everything I needed to arrange. Lawyers to draft the contracts with Iris, financial advisors to set up the trusts and medical payments, private investigators to verify everything she had told me, and to do deep background on Sarah Chen, doctors to consult about the best approach for someone with Daniel's condition. I worked until dawn, planning, strategizing, preparing for every possible scenario. This was what I was good at. This was who I had been before grief broke me, a woman who saw a problem and systematically solved it, who faced obstacles and found ways around them, who never gave up when something mattered. And nothing had ever mattered more than this. As the sun rose over Greenwich, painting my office in shades of gold and pink, I made myself a promise. I would get my son back. Maybe not the way I had imagined during 6 years of grief. Maybe he would never remember being Daniel. Maybe I would always be just Helena to him, a kind stranger who helped support the shelter where he found community. But I would be in his life. I would know my grandchild. I would make sure he and Sarah and their baby had everything they needed, even if they never knew why I cared so much. And someday, if the time was ever right, if his mind ever healed enough to handle the truth, I would tell him who I really was. But until then, I would be patient. I would be strategic. And I would be there, in whatever capacity he could accept. My son was alive. After 6 years of darkness, that single truth was enough to keep me going. Everything else I would figure out as I went. The next afternoon, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. It was absurd, really. Obsessing over clothing when I was about to meet my supposedly dead son for the first time in 6 years. But I needed to look right. Not too wealthy, not too casual. Approachable, but professional. A woman interested in charity work, not a grief-stricken mother about to fall apart. I settled on dark slacks and a simple cashmere sweater in navy blue. Minimal jewelry, just my wedding ring and small pearl earrings. I left my hair down, the way Daniel used to like it when he was young. Then I caught myself and pulled it back into a low ponytail. He wouldn't remember. There was no point in trying to appeal to memories that didn't exist anymore. Iris arrived exactly at 1 o'clock, wearing a conservative dress I had given her last year. She looked nervous, clutching her purse with white knuckles. We barely spoke during the drive to Bridgeport. What was there to say? We both knew what was at stake. St. Catherine's shelter looked worse in daylight than it had the night before. The building was old, paint peeling from the window frames, the front steps cracked and uneven. But it was clean, and there were people coming and going with purpose. A handmade sign near the entrance announced lunch service from noon to 2. "He should be here soon," Iris said quietly as we parked. "He usually comes around 1:30, after the morning construction shift ends." We walked inside together. The woman at the front desk recognized Iris immediately and smiled. "Iris, good to see you. Who's your friend?" "This is Mrs. Helena Ashford," Iris said, her voice steady, despite the tension I could feel radiating from her. "She's my employer, and she's interested in making a donation to St. Catherine's. I told her about the wonderful work you do here." "Oh, how lovely." The woman, whose name tag read Margaret, stood and shook my hand enthusiastically. "We can always use support. Let me get our director." "Actually," I interrupted smoothly, "I prefer to see the programs in action first, if that's all right. Get a feel for the community before making any commitments. I find it helps me understand where funding would be most effective." Of course. Feel free to look around. The dining hall is through those doors if you'd like to see lunch service." We thanked her and moved toward the dining area. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The room was large, filled with mismatched tables and folding chairs. Maybe 40 people were scattered throughout, eating from disposable plates, talking quietly. Volunteers moved between tables, offering seconds, clearing empty dishes. And then I saw him. He was sitting alone at a corner table, hunched over a plate of food, wearing a faded flannel shirt and work jeans. His hair was longer than I remembered, pulled back in a small knot at the base of his neck. He had a short beard, streaked with gray that seemed wrong on someone who was only 30. He looked older, harder, weathered by 6 years of a life I knew nothing about. But it was him, my son, my Daniel. My vision blurred with tears, and I had to grip Iris's arm to steady myself. She understood immediately, whispering, "Breathe, Mrs. Ashford. Just breathe." I forced air into my lungs, blinking rapidly to clear my eyes. I couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when I was this close. "Should we approach him?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Iris nodded. "Let me go first. I'll introduce you naturally." We walked toward his table, and I felt like I was moving through water, everything happening in slow motion. He looked up as we approached, and I saw his eyes, those green-gray eyes that were identical to mine, and something inside me shattered and healed simultaneously. "Hey, Marcus," Iris said casually, smiling. "Mind if we join you?" "Sure, plenty of room." His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher. He gestured to the empty chairs. This was it. The moment I had dreamed about and dreaded for 6 years. I sat down across from my son, close enough to touch him, and he had absolutely no idea who I was. "Marcus, this is my employer, Helena Ashford," Iris said. "She's thinking about supporting St. Catherine's, so I brought her by to see the place." He looked at me directly then, and I had to use every ounce of control not to react, to not reach across the table and grab his hand, to not scream that I was his mother, that I had mourned him, that I loved him more than life itself. "Nice to meet you," he said, extending his hand. I took it, feeling the calluses from construction work, the warmth of his skin. It was the first time I had touched my son in 6 years. I held his hand, perhaps a moment too long before releasing it. "It's wonderful to meet you, Marcus." My voice sounded remarkably steady. "Iris has told me about the community here. It sounds like St. Catherine's does important work." "They saved my life," he said simply. "I was living rough for a long time before I found this place. They gave me food, helped me get ID, connected me with work programs. Good people here." "Iris mentioned you work in construction?" "Yeah, with a crew that renovates old buildings." Ironically, I seem to have a knack for it, even though I can't remember if I ever did it before. He smiled ruefully. Amnesia's a strange thing. You lose everything you were, but somehow parts of you survive anyway. You don't remember anything from before? I couldn't help asking. Nothing concrete. Sometimes I get these flashes, images, feelings. I dream about a big house sometimes, about a woman with blonde hair, but the doctors said those might just be my brain trying to fill in the blanks, not real memories. A woman with blonde hair. He was dreaming about me. That must be incredibly difficult, I said carefully. Not knowing where you came from, who your family was. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or longing. It used to eat me alive, especially at first. I'd lie awake trying to force myself to remember something, anything, but I've made peace with it now. I figure whoever I was before, whatever life I had, it's gone. This is who I am now, Marcus. And honestly, I like who I am. I have good friends, meaningful work, and his entire expression softened. I have Sarah. And we're going to have a baby. Congratulations. The word felt like glass in my throat. Thanks. It's terrifying and exciting all at once. I never thought I'd be a father. Well, I mean, maybe I was before and just don't remember, but you know what I mean. He laughed, and it was Daniel's laugh, the same one I used to hear echoing through our house. A young woman approached the table then, pretty and petite, with dark hair and kind eyes. She was visibly pregnant, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Hey babe, I thought you were eating lunch at the site today. Change of plans. Come sit. Marcus stood and pulled out a chair for her, his hand gentle on her back. Sarah, this is Helena. She's thinking about donating to St. Catherine's. Sarah smiled at me warmly. That's wonderful. This place literally saved both our lives. I shook her hand, studying the woman who had captured my son's heart, who was carrying my grandchild. She seemed genuine, sweet, clearly in love with him. Under different circumstances, I would have been thrilled that Daniel had found someone like her. We talked for perhaps 15 minutes. Safe topics, the shelter's programs, the construction work, Sarah's pregnancy. Marcus was animated when he talked about the baby, about his plans to rent an apartment before the due date, about wanting to be a good father even though he had no memories of his own parents to guide him. You'll figure it out, I heard myself say. The fact that you care so much already means you'll be a wonderful father. He smiled at me, and there was such warmth in it. Thank you. That means a lot. When Iris and I finally left, I made it all the way to the car before my legs gave out. I collapsed into the passenger seat, my whole body shaking. Iris got behind the wheel, saying nothing, giving me space to fall apart. He doesn't remember me at all, I finally said. Not even a flicker of recognition. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ashford. But he's happy. Did you see his face when he talked about Sarah and the baby? He's genuinely happy. He is. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. Doctor, Pemberton was right. Telling him the truth now could destroy the life he's built. It could take away his happiness, his peace. What kind of mother would I be if I did that to him? Iris started the car but didn't drive yet. What are you going to do? I opened my eyes, looking back at the shelter where my son was still inside, living a life that had nothing to do with me. And I made a decision that broke my heart, even as I knew it was right. I'm going to love him from a distance. I'm going to make sure he and Sarah and that baby have everything they need. And I'm going to wait. If he ever remembers, if he ever comes looking for his past, I'll be here. But I won't force it. I won't risk destroying what he has now just to get back what I lost. It was the hardest decision I had ever made. But as we drove away from St. Catherine's, I knew it was the only one I could live with. My son was alive. That would have to be enough. For 3 months, I became a ghost in my own son's life. I donated $500,000 to St. Catherine's Shelter, enough to fund renovations, expand their meal programs, and hire additional staff. It gave me a legitimate reason to visit regularly, to attend board meetings, to be present without raising suspicion. I saw Marcus. I had trained myself to think of him by that name, at least once a week, sometimes at the shelter, sometimes at community events I sponsored. We developed a comfortable acquaintance. He would update me on Sarah's pregnancy, show me ultrasound photos, talk excitedly about the apartment they had finally rented in a safer neighborhood. I paid for that apartment through an anonymous housing assistance grant. They never knew. I kept my promise to Iris. Her mother received a kidney transplant in Romania, covered by a medical charity I funded. Her 2 sons arrived in the United States on proper visas, enrolled in good schools. She signed every confidentiality agreement my lawyers drafted, took her tripled salary, and became genuinely useful as my assistant. We weren't friends. I don't think we could ever be after what she had done. But we had reached a functional working relationship built on mutual benefit rather than trust. And I waited. I watched my son build his life, fall deeper in love with Sarah, prepare for fatherhood. I watched him become someone I didn't fully recognize, but couldn't help admiring. Marcus was gentler than Daniel had been, more patient. Life had humbled him in ways privilege never could have. But everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in November. I was at St. Catherine's for a routine check on the renovation progress when I heard shouting from the administrative office. Margaret, the front desk coordinator, was arguing with someone on the phone, her voice rising in distress. I understand that, but these people have nowhere else to go. You can't just shut us down with 2 weeks' notice. I walked to her desk. What's happening? She looked up, tears streaming down her face. The building owner just informed us he's selling the property. Some developer bought the whole block. We have 14 days to vacate. Mrs. Ashford, we have over 200 people who depend on this shelter. Where are they supposed to go? My mind immediately went to Marcus. This shelter wasn't just a meal service for him. It was his community, his support system, the place where he had rebuilt his entire identity. Let me make some calls, I said. Don't panic yet. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with my lawyers, real estate contacts, and city officials. The news was worse than I thought. The developer had purchased 6 buildings in this area, planning to demolish them for luxury condos. St. Catherine's wasn't just losing their building, the entire neighborhood was being gutted. By evening, I had gathered all the information I could. I called an emergency board meeting at my house for the next morning. Margaret, the shelter director, Father Michael, 3 board members, and Iris all crowded into my dining room while I laid out the situation. The sale is final, I explained. The developer has all the permits. We can't stop it, but we can relocate. I've found a property in Bridgeport that could work, an old community center that's been vacant for 2 years. It would need significant renovation, but it's larger than our current space and in a good location. How much? Father Michael asked. The building is $1.2 million. Renovations would be another $800,000. We'd need to move fast, hire contractors, get permits, complete the work within 6 months to minimize service disruption. The room fell silent. That kind of money was beyond anything St. Catherine's could raise. I'll cover it, I said. All of it. $2 million total. I'll purchase the building and donate it to St. Catherine's, fully renovated. Margaret gasped. Mrs. Ashford, that's incredibly generous, but no conditions. No strings attached. I want this community to survive. These people need this shelter. I paused. But we need to tell everyone now. Today, before panic sets in. That afternoon, Father Michael called an emergency community meeting at the shelter. Over 100 people showed up, including Marcus and Sarah. I stood at the back of the room while Father Michael explained the situation, watching fear and confusion spread through the crowd. Where are we supposed to go? Someone shouted. What about the meal program? I just got stable. I can't go back to the streets. Father Michael raised his hands for calm. We're not abandoning anyone. Thanks to an extremely generous donor, we've already secured a new location. We'll be relocating to a larger facility and will maintain all our current programs throughout the transition. Relief swept through the room, followed by applause. I saw Marcus lean over to Sarah, relief evident on his face. But then I noticed something else. He was pale, gripping the edge of his chair, his eyes unfocused. Sarah noticed too, touching his arm. Babe, you okay? He stood abruptly. I need some air. He walked quickly toward the exit, and without thinking, I followed him. He made it to the small courtyard behind the building before he collapsed onto a bench, his head in his hands, breathing hard. Marcus? I approached carefully. Are you all right? He looked up, and I was startled to see tears on his face. I'm fine, just too many people in there. I needed space. May I sit? He nodded, and I sat beside him on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. We sat in silence for a moment while he tried to compose himself. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I don't usually fall apart like this. It's just, when Father Michael said the shelter was closing, for a minute I was back there, back to 6 years ago, waking up in a hospital with no memory, no identity, nothing. The terror of not knowing who I was or where I belonged. This place gave me an anchor when I had nothing. The thought of losing it, you're not losing it. We're just moving it. I know. Rationally, I know that. But panic doesn't listen to reason." He wiped his eyes. "God, this is embarrassing. Breaking down in front of one of our major donors. You're not breaking down. You're processing a shock. That's completely normal." I hesitated, then took a risk. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "The dreams you mentioned, about the big house, the woman with blonde hair, do you still have them?" He looked at me, surprised. "Yeah, actually. More frequently lately, especially since Sarah got pregnant. It's like my brain is trying to tell me something, but I can't quite grasp it." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. I've read about amnesia, about how sometimes the subconscious holds on to things the conscious mind can't access. Maybe those dreams mean your memories are trying to surface. Maybe. But honestly, part of me doesn't want them to. I'm terrified of what I might remember. What if I had a family? What if there are people out there who think I'm dead? What if I was someone terrible, and that's why I ended up in that accident?" He laughed bitterly. "Sometimes not knowing feels safer." My heart broke, hearing him voice the exact fears that had paralyzed me for months. "I don't think you were someone terrible. Good people don't become good people. They are good people, with or without their memories. Everything I've seen tells me you're someone with a kind heart and strong values. That doesn't come from amnesia. That's who you are fundamentally." He smiled at me, and there was such genuine warmth in it. "Thank you, Helena. You've been really kind to me, to all of us here. More than just writing checks. You actually care. That's rare. You remind me of someone I lost," I said before I could stop myself. "That's part of why I care so much about this place. Helping you and others like you helps me feel connected to him somehow. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. He would have been about your age now, actually. 30 or so. What happened to him?" "Car accident. 6 years ago." The truth slipped out naturally, and I saw Marcus's expression change. 6 years ago. That's when He trailed off, his eyes searching mine with sudden intensity. "That's when my amnesia started. What month did your son die?" March 15th. All the color drained from his face. "That's the date on my hospital admission form. March 15th, 6 years ago. Helena, what was your son's name?" This was it. The moment I had been avoiding, preparing for, dreading. The truth was right there, demanding to be spoken. But Dr. Pemberton's warnings echoed in my mind. Forcing memories could cause severe psychological damage. "Marcus, I don't think—" "What was his name?" He stood up, agitation clear in every movement. "Please, I need to know." I stood too, my hands shaking. "His name was Daniel. Daniel Ashford." He stared at me, and I watched something shift in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or just desperate hope. "Ashford. Your last name is Ashford." "I'm Marcus. I never had a last name. The hospital just put Doe on my paperwork because I couldn't tell them who I was." "Marcus, you need to sit down. You're having a panic attack." "Am I Daniel?" His voice rose. "Is that why you've been coming here so often? Why you donated all that money? Oh God, Sarah mentioned you always watch me during community meals. I thought you were just observant, but you were watching me specifically, weren't you?" People were starting to come outside, drawn by his raised voice. Sarah rushed over, her face full of concern. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He turned to her wildly. "She thinks I'm her son who died in a car accident 6 years ago." Sarah looked at me, confusion and fear in her eyes. "What is he talking about?" I saw Iris appear in the doorway, her expression horrified. This wasn't how this was supposed to happen. This was exactly the scenario I had been trying to avoid. A public confrontation, forced revelation, panic instead of careful disclosure. "Everyone please calm down," I said, trying to take control. "Marcus, you're right. I believe you might be my son. But this isn't the time or place to discuss this. You need to—" "How long have you known?" He stepped closer to me, and there was anger in his voice now. "How long have you been watching me, knowing who I might be and saying nothing?" 3 months. I found out 3 months ago." 3 months? Sarah's voice was sharp. "You've known for 3 months and didn't tell him? Didn't tell me? I'm carrying his child and you didn't think we deserved to know?" "I was trying to protect him." The medical experts said forcing memories on someone with traumatic brain injury could cause severe psychological damage. I was waiting for the right time. The right way? The right time? Marcus was shouting now, and more people were gathering. "I've spent 6 years wondering who I was, where I came from, if anyone was looking for me. And you knew, and you let me keep wondering." "I thought you were dead," I shouted back, my own composure finally breaking. "I buried you. I stood beside your casket and said goodbye. I lost your father to a heart attack because the grief of losing you killed him. For 6 years I've lived in hell, and when I finally found out you were alive, I was told that revealing the truth could destroy you. So yes, I waited. I watched from a distance. I made sure you had everything you needed while trying to figure out how to give you back your past without taking away your present." The courtyard went completely silent. Marcus stood frozen, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sarah had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "You're my mother," Marcus said quietly. "You're actually my mother. I don't know for certain. There was an error at the hospital. They misidentified bodies. But yes, I believe you're my son Daniel. You have his eyes, his birthmark, his—" "Prove it." "What?" "Prove it. DNA test, medical records, whatever. Because I can't process this on faith. I need to know for sure." "Of course, whatever you need." He nodded slowly, then turned to Sarah. "Can we go home? I need to leave. I need to think." "Yeah, of course." Sarah put her arm around him, shooting me a look that was equal parts hurt and fury. "Let's go." I watched them walk away, my son and his pregnant girlfriend, leaving me standing in that courtyard surrounded by shocked onlookers. Iris approached hesitantly. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. I should have warned you he was asking questions. It's done." My voice sounded dead even to my own ears. "Call my lawyer. Tell him we need to arrange DNA testing immediately." And then, I paused, looking at the crowd still watching me. "And then we prepare for whatever comes next." I walked to my car alone, got in, and drove home in complete silence. I had spent 3 months being so careful, so strategic, so protective, and in 5 minutes it had all fallen apart. But maybe, I thought as I pulled into my driveway, maybe this was how it had to happen. Maybe there was no perfect way to tell someone their entire identity might be a lie. Maybe the truth always hurt, no matter how carefully you tried to deliver it. I just had to hope that Marcus, Daniel, whoever he was, could forgive me for trying to protect him, and that when the DNA results came back, they would give us both the answers we desperately needed. The waiting, once again, would be the hardest part. The DNA test took 5 days to process. 5 days of silence from Marcus and Sarah. 5 days of waiting by the phone, checking my email constantly, barely sleeping. 5 days of wondering if I had destroyed everything by letting the truth come out the way it did. My lawyer arranged everything through a neutral medical facility. Marcus and I went on different days to avoid an awkward encounter. The technician swabbed my cheek, labeled the sample, and told me results would be available by the end of the week. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to potentially confirm what I had known in my heart for 3 months. When the email finally arrived, I was sitting in my office at 2 a.m, unable to sleep. I stared at the subject line for a full minute before I could bring myself to open it. DNA analysis results. 99.97% probability of maternal relationship. He was my son. Daniel was alive. It was real. I printed the report with shaking hands, then sat there holding it, reading the scientific confirmation over and over. After 6 years of grief, after 3 months of careful observation, after that catastrophic confrontation, I finally had undeniable proof. But the relief I expected didn't come. Instead, I felt terrified. Because now came the harder part, waiting to see if my son wanted anything to do with me. I didn't have to wait long. 2 hours later, as dawn was breaking over Greenwich, my phone rang. "Marcus." I got the results, he said without preamble. His voice was flat, emotionless. So it's true. You're my biological mother. Yes? Silence stretched between us. I waited, barely breathing. Sarah and I have been talking, he continued. We've been reading about amnesia, about identity, about what happens when people recover memories of past lives. It's complicated. I know. The thing is, Helena, and I'm sorry, but I can't call you Mom right now. I don't remember you. I don't remember being Daniel. I've tried. These past 5 days I've tried so hard to force some memory, some feeling of connection. But there's nothing. You're a stranger to me, who happens to share my DNA. Each word felt like a knife, but I understood. I know. I'm not asking you to remember me, or to be someone you're not. I just wanted you to know the truth. Why now? Why tell me at all if you were so worried about the psychological damage? I didn't plan to tell you that way. You figured it out yourself. The dates, the circumstances. You're intelligent, Marcus. You put the pieces together before I was ready. So you were just going to watch me forever? Fund my life from the shadows and never say anything? I don't know. Maybe. I was trying to figure out what was right, what would help you rather than hurt you. He laughed bitterly. Well, it hurt. Finding out that way, in front of everyone. Sarah's been crying for days. She's terrified this is going to change me, change us. She's afraid you're going to try to take me away from the life we've built. I would never. But you want to, he interrupted. Don't you? You want me to move into that mansion in Greenwich, to remember being Daniel, to be your son again. Be honest. I took a shaky breath. Of course I want that. I'm your mother. I've missed you every single day for 6 years. But Marcus, I'm not a fool. I know you're not the same person you were. I know you've built a life, fallen in love, become someone new, and I can see that you're happy. So no, I don't want to take you away from that. I want to be part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with, even if that's just occasional dinners or phone calls, even if you never remember me. More silence. Then, Sarah wants to meet you. Properly, I mean. Not in a courtyard with me having a panic attack. She thinks the baby should know their grandmother. If you want that, my heart stopped. Are you serious? I'm terrified, he admitted. This whole thing terrifies me. But Sarah's right. You are the baby's grandmother. And you've been kind to me, to all of us at the shelter. Whatever else is true, that matters. So yeah, if you want to be part of our lives, we're willing to try. Slowly. With boundaries. Anything. Any boundaries you need? Any pace you want. I'll follow your lead. Okay. Sarah suggested dinner at our apartment. This Saturday if you're free. Nothing fancy, just talking. Getting to know each other as we are now, not as we were. I would love that. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. This might not work. I might never remember being Daniel. I might always just be Marcus to you. Then I'll learn to love Marcus. Because you're still my son, memories or not. I heard his voice crack slightly. I'll text you our address. Come at 6? I'll be there. After he hung up, I sat in my office and cried. Not tears of grief this time, but something more complex. Relief mixed with hope, mixed with residual fear. My son was alive. He was willing to let me into his life. It wasn't the reunion I had imagined during 6 years of mourning, but it was real. It was something. Saturday arrived both too quickly and not fast enough. I agonized over what to bring, finally settling on a simple meal contribution and a children's book that had been Daniel's favorite when he was young. Not as a memory trigger, but as a bridge between past and future. A book his child might love the way he once had. Their apartment was small but clean, in a modest building in a working-class neighborhood. So different from the life Daniel had grown up in, but I could see they had made it a home. Sarah opened the door, her pregnant belly prominent now, her expression cautious but not hostile. Mrs. Ashford, come in. Please call me Helena. Marcus was in the small kitchen, stirring something on the stove. He looked nervous, his movements stiff. Hey, hope you like pasta. It's pretty much all I know how to make. It smells wonderful. We made awkward small talk while finishing dinner preparations. Sarah showed me the nursery they were setting up in the second bedroom, a crib I had anonymously purchased through the shelter's assistance program, though I didn't mention that. We sat down to eat, The conversation stilted at first, everyone careful not to say the wrong thing. But gradually, something shifted. Sarah asked about my work, about building my consulting firm. I asked about their plans for the baby, about Marcus's construction projects. We found common ground in discussing books, in laughing at Sarah's cravings for pickle ice cream, in Marcus's terrible jokes that reminded me so much of his father. At one point, Sarah excused herself to the bathroom, and Marcus and I were alone. He looked at me seriously. "I've been having more dreams," he said quietly, "since finding out the truth. I dreamed about a man teaching me to ride a bike, about a big kitchen with an island where I did homework, about a trip to a beach where I built sandcastles. Cape Cod," I whispered. "Your father taught you to bike in our driveway when you were 6. You did homework at our kitchen island all through school. We went to Cape Cod every summer until you were a teenager." He nodded slowly. I don't know if they're real memories or just my brain filling in blanks with information I now know, but they feel real. They feel important. Whether they're memories or not, they're part of you now. That's what matters. When I left that night, Sarah hugged me goodbye. Marcus walked me to my car. "Same time next week?" he asked. "I would like that very much." He hesitated, then said, "I'm glad you didn't give up. Even when it seemed impossible, even when I was angry. I'm glad you kept trying. You're my son. I will never give up on you." He smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from him since that day in the courtyard. "Good night, Helena. Good night, Marcus." As I drove home, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The grief, the shock, the hope, the careful waiting, the explosive revelation. Nothing had gone the way I planned. My son didn't remember me. He might never remember me. The relationship we once had was gone, replaced by something new and uncertain. But he was alive. He was happy. He was willing to let me be part of his life. And in 3 months, I would be a grandmother to a child who would know me from the beginning, who would never question my place in their family. It wasn't the ending I had imagined 6 years ago when I buried an empty casket. It wasn't even the ending I had imagined 3 months ago when I first saw those photos on Iris's phone. But it was an ending I could live with. More than that, it was a beginning. A chance to build something new from the ruins of what was lost. A chance to love my son as he was now, not just mourn who he used to be. The house was still too big and too quiet when I got home, but for the first time in 6 years, it didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like a house waiting to be filled with new memories, with Saturday dinners and baby visits and the sound of my grandchild's laughter. My son was alive, and somehow, against all odds, we were going to be okay. Not the same, not what we were, but okay. And after 6 years of darkness, okay was more than enough. It was everything.